So I recently had the blessing and opportunity to attend Universal's Epic Universe theme park. Their brand new theme park in the Universal Orlando Resort. I'm gonna be honest right out of the gate here. I feel like it was a huge missed opportunity to not call it Universal's Universal Universe. I mean, come on, you've already got the word universe there in the name twice. You could have just done one more. But in all seriousness, no, I did get to go to Epic Universe about a month ago with some family and friends, and I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience because it's not too often that you get a brand new major theme park here in the Orlando space. Maybe around the world it's a bit different. Perhaps there are theme parks opening every other day. I don't think that's the case, but still, at least here in Orlando, it's pretty rare, mostly because we're used to getting new attractions at pre-existing theme parks. At least for Disney, I think the last theme park they opened was around 1998, and I think for Universal it was pretty similar for Islands of Adventure. So it's been a solid quarter of 100 years, century, I think, that we've gotten a brand new theme park, and so I was pretty interested going in to see why Universal decided to build a whole new theme park from the ground up. It's pretty interesting. Before we get started, I should probably preface this with a massive spoiler warning. That's right, I'm going to be going into detail on everything I personally experienced and all of my thoughts and opinions on it. When writing this, nothing was off the table, so if you haven't gotten the opportunity to experience something and you want to go in blind, this is probably not the video you want to be watching. I'm going to be going throughout my day and all the different experiences we had, but I didn't get to experience everything. I'll get into what things those were later on in the review, so if I don't address something, that's why. I just haven't gotten the chance to experience it yet, so I didn't want to spoil myself and talk about it by looking it up on the internet. There are a few exceptions to that, for reasons that we'll talk about a bit later, but yeah, seriously, if you want to experience Epic Universe for yourself blind, and I highly recommend you do, at least for the first time you go, please do not watch this yet. I know it's probably not a very good idea to tell everybody who's just started watching your video, don't watch this yet. But seriously, this is a brand new theme park. If you want to go in blind, you really should, because I think it's worth it. Anyway, my point is, there are spoilers in here. Pretty big spoilers for a lot of attractions. You've been warned. But with that being said, let's get into some of what I thought, and notably that starts with the park's entrance. You may be wondering what I have to say about the entrance, and I'll be honest, it's not that much, but I will say it's a pretty nice entrance. Notably, it's nice to finally have a full-size parking lot for a Universal park. That's pretty crazy. At least for every other single Universal park in the Orlando Resort, you have to go through their parking garage, at least if you're driving a car there, which is pretty cramped. I mean, it works. It's a parking garage, right? It'll get the job done, but it can be a little bit stressful, especially when they don't have that much space to work with in the original property. So it was very surreal to just drive up to Universal and not be at the parking garage, and it's like, oh boy, they have actual land now that they can use. It's like this is Disney. What's going on here? But yeah, the parking lot was nice. It was very big, but you do have to walk all the way to the entrance. They don't have any tram equivalent or moving walkways. I think there were supposed to be moving walkways installed, but then Universal was like, yeah, there's not much of a point to it. And I kind of agree. I don't really see how moving walkways would have helped that much with this parking lot. They can be very helpful when everybody is going through one specific direction, but people are going to be parking in different spots all over the place. It doesn't make sense for them to then cross to a moving walkway and then go to the park. But that's an aside. Basically, I like having a huge parking lot. Second of all, the entrance is very close to the security. The main park gate that you scan your ticket at is pretty much right after the security turnstiles, which I was a little concerned about. I mean, obviously it's safe. I have no doubt about that. Universal would not mess around with safety and security, especially not at their brand new theme park, but I was a little surprised at how close it was. The security was just right next to the ticket gate, but alright, whatever. We eventually get into the park, and once you do, you are greeted by this giant portal with the park name on it and a little theme and motif they've got written on the gate. You walk through and you are inside Celestial Park, which is the first main area and land of the park that they're advertising. A few notes here. The scale was pretty impressive when you enter. The entire land of the park, of Celestial Park in general, is up on an incline. So when you enter the park, you get to see the entire land since you're all the way at the top and you can see the whole property. And that's very nice. It's a great sense of scale, and it kind of puts into perspective how much space they have. The promo materials for this land talked about how Universal's direction was putting the park back in theme park. And honestly, I can see it. It's very beautiful. They've got a ton of rock work and walkways that are going in between the different like rivers and fountains, and it's very nice looking. At least the day that we went, it had about medium-high crowds, but the entire time, never did the walkways in Celestial Park get cramped or feel cramped at all. It was still very spacious. Even during noon, which I think was the height of the crowds, there was a lot of people out and about, but you didn't have to worry about rubbing up against other people. It was plenty of space to still be able to walk around and enjoy the atmosphere. I will say I didn't get the opportunity to check out the Constellation Carousel, I think that's the name, nor any of the individual restaurants they had around property in this land, but we did get to ride one attraction, and that is Stardust Racers. Although really quickly before we get into the ride, I forgot to mention that my brother also got some Asian food from one of the stands that were here. I don't exactly know what item he got, but he said it was pretty good, and I trust him, so probably pretty good Asian food in one of these stands. Who knows? I think it was the one that's to the left of the entrance of How to Train Your Dragon. But yes, Stardust Racers! I remember when this ride used to be called Starfall Racers before Universal had some trademark issues. Back when they started doing the media run for the entire park, they announced this ride alongside the original name. January 30th, 2024 is when they had the whole media blowout, but apparently sometime later that year, they quietly changed it to Stardust Racers because of the Starfall Education Foundation. Apparently there's some sort of like educational website with games for kids that are based around like math and literature and whatnot. Kind of looks like a discount like Cool Math Games, but yeah, this organization challenged the ride name. They cited brand misappropriation towards children, and that was apparently a big enough deal for Universal to want to change the name entirely instead of bother going to court for it, which I thought was pretty funny. It doesn't have much to do with the ride, but a fun little tidbit there. As for the ride itself, well, this was pretty shockingly intense. It took my breath away, I'll be honest. We rode the green version of it. There's two coasters you can go on, yellow and green, and after the metal detectors, you get the option to choose which one you want to go on. I was planning on doing yellow, but everyone else in my party was like, let's do green instead, because they're all walking that direction, so it's like, yeah, sure, fair enough. I'll ride with my own party members if I must. But genuinely, we got on the ride, and oh my gosh, it was spectacular. The inversion right after the second launch in particular was super cool. I don't know what that inversion is called, but it's where you duel with the other track, but you both kind of like invert between each other at the same time. No clue what that element is called, but it was super cool. It was also way more forceful than I expected. I did have to take like 5 to 10 minutes after I rode to kind of recover a bit. I wasn't sick or anything, but I did feel like adrenaline rush, and I kind of had to bring myself back down from that afterwards. It was pretty powerful. It feels like if Hulk and Velocicoaster kind of had a child, because there was a lot of very positive Gs and very negative Gs at different points, and it kind of whips between them very quickly. And at no point does this ride let up. In Velocicoaster, there are some brief elements of reduced intensity, primarily right before the second launch, so it kind of cools you down a bit right before it amps you back up again. But I don't feel like that ever really happened in this ride. It's just constant action. You do not get to rest at all. And while that's very cool and powerful, I think I prefer Velocicoaster in terms of Universal's coasters. Stardust packs a punch, and it's really nice. But my personal favorite goes to Velocicoaster still. That being said, it's a spectacular coaster and a good addition to the park. Very clearly the park's main themed ride, obviously. And it's definitely their most intense coaster to date, so I really liked it. Alright, that's everything for Celestial Park. Let's get into How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berk. Yes, that's the full name. They could have just called it Berk, but they called it How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berk. You will notice very soon that extremely long names are a pretty common element of this theme park. I'm just gonna come right out and say it. I did not get to see much of this land, unfortunately. We had focused on other lands in the park throughout the day, and this one kinda ended up just falling by the wayside as a result. We were like, oh crap, we haven't even been to the Berk area at all, and so we ran over really quickly, but by the time we did, most of the attractions were still pretty high wait times, and we had wanted to go see a show at the Harry Potter area, which I will get into later anyway, so we really only got to do a cursory walk around and glance at different things and attractions and whatnot before we had to quickly run over there. So, didn't get to ride any rides, but there's no doubt that this area is pretty nice. I am not the biggest fan of the How to Train Your Dragon series or films. I mean, I've watched the animated ones, but I'm not like a super mega fan or anything. But that being said, the area is gorgeous. They've done a great job replicating the island from the films, and by far this is clearly the most complete of all of the lands in the entire theme park. They've got 3 full rides and a stage show and a kid playground training camp area that we did want to see, but unfortunately we just didn't get a chance. We especially wanted to see the stage show, The Untrainable Dragon, but we had unfortunately missed all the show times without realizing, and then it was too late when we checked. We were like, oh, dang it. It seems to stop showing pretty early into the evening, or at least maybe that's how it was the day that we went, but it's a little unfortunate. There are a ton of different animatronics, though, throughout this land. They have a ton of dragon animatronics just peeking out of the windows near some of the shops. There was notably an ice dragon near what was called the Spitfire Grill. I hate that name, by the way, but that's an aside. The ice dragons seemed to have face tracking. Maybe I was going insane, but it seemed to be responding to what we were doing. We were kind of waving our arms, and my brother was trying to talk to it, and it was responding and whatnot. I wonder if they have an actor or something controlling it, because it was really fluid and pretty impressive. We did end up getting some food when we were popping by this land late at night from the Spitfire Grill. Again, still hate that name. And I didn't eat any of it myself, but they said it was really good, and it was extremely quick, too. They ended up ordering on the mobile app, which is funny because all of the employees are just standing inside the restaurant, just kind of waiting around for an order to come in. So I guess we could have just walked up and talked to them, but I don't know if that's an option right now. I think it's only mobile ordering. That's an aside. Basically, we got some food from there, and party members said it was really good. The steak and rice plates is what they ordered, and they quite liked it, so I bet there's probably pretty good food here. I need to have another visit in order to fully check out and review this area in full. But there's no doubt that it's a great addition. It looks gorgeous, all the attractions look very good. I've heard especially good things about Hiccup's Wing Gliders, the semi-family coaster they have here. So when I get the chance to revisit, I'll need to pop down there and check it out. But that's all I have to say about Berk, or rather, How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berk. Very long name again. And hey, we're about to run into another super long name because it's time to talk about the Wizarding World of Harry Potter: Ministry of Magic. These land names just keep getting longer and longer. I should also mention, going into this land, that I am not what I would consider a Harry Potter fan, but I've ridden all of the Harry Potter attractions at the Universal Studios Park and Islands of Adventure, and those are phenomenal. They make me want to be a fan of the franchise, but I just can't really get into it myself. That being said, Forbidden Journey is one of my favorite dark rides in general, and I especially love Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure TM, so I was excited to see what they'd cooked up here. First off, I don't know what's going on with the setting in this land, because you enter it and it appears to be in 1900s Paris, but then the actual ride takes place in the British Ministry of Magic right after the entire Harry Potter film franchise? And I think that's the 2000s. So I have no clue how that works, but whatever. It probably has something to do with the time turners that are everywhere in the land, and supposedly that has something to do with time and moving around time, so it works. It's not a very big deal, it's just a little silly. I will say, Paris is very nice looking, and I think I prefer it to the France Pavilion that Disney's made at Epcot. It's very tall, and there's a ton of stuff to look at, but the atmosphere is very gorgeous. Walking around it at night with the low crowds and all the beautiful lights, it's very serene. I will say it's a little bit awkward entering this land, and this is something I have to say about Super Nintendo World too, so I might as well bring it up, where you are approaching the portal, and you can see the super cool portal, and they've got these effects inside of it, and they're playing sound through to make it feel like you're being warped through, but before you enter the portal, you can still see the facade of the land behind the portal that you're about to enter. Especially with the Ministry of Magic portal, it's a little bit awkward there. It's not a big deal. I mean, there's probably not much they could do about that with how much space they had and how they wanted to make it decent walking. You don't want guests to be walking super far past this portal to get into the lane. I'm rambling. My point is that's just a little bit silly to me, and that's pretty noticeable here. But once you're in the land, you can't really see anything from the outside, at least. So that's pretty nice. Inside this land, we were able to do both of the main attractions they advertise here. But first, I want to talk about Les Cercles Arcanus. Or is it Arcanus? Arcanus? They Cirque Arcane We saw the circus show. This show is mostly based off of the Fantastic Beasts films, which I have also not seen. And honestly, I probably missed something by not having watched the movies, because near the end of the show, it kind of starts to lose me. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start with the queue. I gotta say, I love the circus tent building they've constructed. The creepy circus music that plays when you walk in is right up my alley, and they funnel you into this large holding room where you stand and watch, surprisingly, a pre-show. I didn't expect there to be a pre-show for this, but we got one. About the show proper, well, it's strangely paced, but it did have some neat effects and parlor tricks. The puppetry in particular was really nice, and the stage rising was definitely the highlight of everything. It absolutely caught me off guard. In universe, I have no clue why this briefcase has the Harry Potter equivalent of Narnia inside it. It's probably explained in the films, I bet, but whatever. The entire plot of the show is basically that we're attending this circus, and this ringmaster guy seems to have taken this magical briefcase. And a lady helping to run the circus finds out about it, and then it turns into this whole we gotta protect the creatures inside the briefcase from the evil ringmaster side plot. The pre-show set this up pretty well, but then the first half of the main show is just circus performers in a circus. It feels a little bit awkward to just wait for what we know is going to be the main act and watch these guys twirl giant cubes around. I mean, I liked the circus performance part. I'm not saying I didn't like it, but it's just a little strange that so much time is devoted to the circus act, and then so little in the main show is focused on the overarching plot that they set up in the pre-show. In the end, Mr. Fantastic Beasts himself shows up. I'm surprised they were able to get him here. And he defeats the ringmaster, but in a really weird way. They just kind of like stuff him in a closet and call it a day. I mean, he's still in the briefcase, so like, I don't know how that helps much. Maybe they're going for the irony of, oh, he's trapped these creatures to perform in a circus, and now he gets a taste of his own medicine, but it's just kind of funny that they cram him in the closet and then instantly celebrate, like, woohoo, we did it! Like, he's still there, guys. He still wants to kill you. If they would have combined the pre-show into the main show beats, I think this show would have been a lot more enjoyable and less awkward, but it's a fine show. I just don't think it's anything too crazy. So if you end up missing it, you don't need to lose sleep over it. I mean, you can lose a little sleep over it, but like, only an hour at most. Come on, you need that sleep. Now it's time to talk about the main attraction in this land. Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry. Believe it or not, that name is actually pretty good restraint when it comes to Universal. They could have made the name a lot longer. This is the fourth major Harry Potter themed attraction at Universal Orlando, not counting Flight of the Hippogriff, and Universal really amped this ride up in their promos, saying how innovative and immersive it was, so I had pretty high hopes going in. When we entered Epic Universe, there was a sign saying that this ride would be closing early, probably for maintenance and testing or whatever. So we ended up hitting it first thing and waiting like 2 hours for it, which, in retrospect, we should not have done. The ride operated the entire day and never closed at any point all the way up until closing, and it had like a 30-minute wait near the end of the day, which, I'll be honest, would have been very nice. Especially because, unfortunately, I was pretty underwhelmed with this attraction. Now, that's not to say it was bad, but with how much Universal really propped this ride up on a pedestal, let's just say I was expecting something different. But let's start at the beginning, which is the queue. We got a really good look at the queue with our 2-hour wait, and honestly, it's probably the highlight of the attraction for me. Once you pass through the Metroflute tunnel, you arrive in the main atrium of the Ministry of Magic, and the scale is really something to behold. I love the way that they've designed the office segment here to seemingly go up infinitely. That's super cool. And the giant banner of Umbridge just screaming to herself and losing her mind is really neat. It was fun to watch that. Some other rooms in the queue, like this little cleaning vacuum and the TV room with the different wood blocks moving and shifting around, are neat. But I especially loved the animatronic work in Umbridge's office, particularly the elf and the duster that are moving around the room. Those were super creative, and I wish I could have gotten a better look at them, but ironically, that was the part of the queue that moved the fastest for us, so we just kind of like walked by and went, ooh, that's cool, and then just kept walking past it. As for the ride experience itself, well, it's alright, I guess. I mean, there were some impressive effects and neat sets and animatronics, but honestly, I couldn't help this feeling of been there, done that. Like, there wasn't anything I hadn't seen before. About what happens on the ride, well, you're there for Umbridge's trial after the conclusion of the main films, and of course, once you get on the ride, things go wrong, and she escapes, and you gotta capture her and all that jazz. I think she's trying to bring back Lord Voldemort or something to help her, but at the very end, Harry and crew are able to stop her and put her in jail and everything. Arguably, the most impressive element of this ride is the way that they blended the physical sets and the projections, where they'll have floating elevators moving in front of other screens, as well as entire physical sets that are in front of projection screens. And at first, that is really cool to me, and it made me pretty excited for what was to come, but they reuse that effect a lot to the point where it just kind of becomes boring. I mean, yeah, in theory it's impressive, but when these elevators are essentially screens floating in front of other screens, it kind of loses me. Like, this could have all just been one projection screen. Sure, that's not as impressive, but the end result still feels like it would have been the same. I also had difficulty following the story and understanding why we were going certain places. It completely lost me at the magical creatures department. And honestly, the very last dialogue really ticked me off. Alright, I have to talk about this. This is a bit of a tangent, but whatever. All of the other Harry Potter rides at Universal do this thing where they thank you or have a final line or zinger that they toss at you. Like at the end of Hagrid's, when he's like, "See you next lesson," or the end of Gringotts, when they're like, "It's the safest place on Earth."
After all, it's the safest place on Earth.
And I really like that, but they do something here where they're like, "We all saved the Ministry. Thank you, friends." And I just want to bang my head into a wall. I didn't do jack to help you. I was sitting in an elevator this entire time. That one line just really ticked me off to no end. And yes, it's why the ride sucks. I'm joking, of course. But I will say it didn't help that when we rode, the audio was just a second behind than when it should have been. Bit of a technical bug that kind of brought us out of the immersion a little bit. Maybe we just got unlucky. To be honest, though, there were some elements I did like. The larger scenes with the physical sets are pretty grand in scale, and they do genuinely look gorgeous. I especially like the scene near the end when the Ministry is disintegrating and the clock bells are tolling back and forth, and there is some creative use of switching between the screens and the physical sets, like at the end when Umbridge's animatronic gets pulled off this clock she's standing on near the end. I also really like the scene in the courtroom after they capture her, and the entire courtroom materializes out of thin air. That's really nice projection mapping. But overall, it felt like I had already seen a lot of this stuff before. It doesn't help that I did have to wait 2 hours for it, so that raised my expectations further. But that's not to say it's bad. It's clearly well made. I just wish that perhaps it pushed a bit more into the physical sets. But that's just me. After getting off initially, I was pretty harsh on this ride, but I've warmed up a bit to it now that I know what it is and what to expect. And I was lucky that everything seemed to be working properly, except for the audio when I went. But, yeah. It's fine in my opinion, but there's another dark ride in this park that absolutely blows it out of the water. But first, it's time to talk about Super Nintendo World. So, full disclosure number one, I am a huge Nintendo fan. I grew up with the GameCube, the Wii, the Wii U, and I still play their modern games today. I'm not a full fan of everything they tend to do, especially business-wise, but genuinely I do like the games that they make. As a result of that, disclosure number two, I had already seen a large majority of what this land had to offer. For the rest of Epic Universe, I went in completely blind because I didn't want to spoil anything. But since this land opened up back in 2021 at Universal Studios Japan, back then I did watch online footage of the land and the attractions, so I generally knew what to expect going in. That being said, this is probably my favorite overall land at the park. I know, shocker, the Nintendo fan likes the Nintendo land, but seriously, the energy and joy in this land is so visceral. It's phenomenal. I love the atmosphere in here. There's constant movement, and the colors are very vibrant, with the moving coins constantly spinning on Mount Beanpole, and the Thwomps, and the Yoshis, and the Koopas all walking around. It's genuinely a treat to look at. Now, I am aware that because of the way they've designed and built this land, there's nowhere near enough shade as there should be, and there is a ton of verticality. So I think it's probably best enjoyed on an overcast day with a good amount of cloud cover. Thankfully, by the time we went to this land in the day, the cloud cover had come in and hit most of the sun, so it wasn't nearly as hot as it normally would be. Additionally, most of the families that went there first thing with little kids had left to other parts of the park at that point. So I recommend hitting this area a bit later into the day, kind of like late afternoon and early evening for the most comfortable experience. Here, we had the opportunity to do 3 of the main attractions, notably the Power-Up Band Challenges as they're called, Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge, and Donkey Kong Minecart Madness, and I'm gonna go through each one in turn. I'll be honest, I wasn't originally planning on buying one of the power-up band things, since they're like $50, but I figured I needed a souvenir for the day anyway, and figured it'd make sense. These bands act as a way that you can interact with the land. They've got a bunch of blocks and games that use it to keep track of your progress. The overarching plot of these challenges is that Bowser Jr. has stolen the Golden Mushroom, which I didn't really know those things were that rare, considering how often they appear when you're playing Mario Kart 8, but perhaps it's just because Bowser couldn't properly get the trade deal between the Mushroom Kingdom set up, so I guess Junior decided to take it by force or something. I guess we'll never know, since the point of this isn't the plot, it's to play the games to get the mushroom back. They've got 5 of these minigames scattered across the land that you can play with your band, as well as a final boss room you can access once you've completed at least 3 challenges. And honestly, they were pretty fun. I know it's mostly designed for children, but they did a good job making it engaging for all ages. My brother and I ended up getting bands and completing all 5 activities and the boss. And that was nice, since by the time we did them, the game lines were really short and most of the activities were pretty empty. I just loved the experience of finding a hidden cave and being delighted at whatever fun effects that they had hidden around the corners. Because that's another thing, a lot of these activities aren't really marked, at least not in person, not with a giant sign or anything. You just kind of have to explore and discover them on your own, especially the caves, which really added to this feeling of excitement and discovery. As for the activities themselves, most of them are timing-based minigames, like stopping timers to prevent a piranha plant from waking up, or flipping over question mark tiles, or creating a key in time. They do their job of being a fun little minigame to participate in, and some of them can be a bit challenging on the first try when you're still trying to figure out what to do. You can also lose some of these minigames. If you do, you'll have to go back in line to try them again. We met one kid who had been doing the POW block timing minigame for 3 times in a row, and he was on his 4th try and he really wanted to get it, and thankfully he did. We cheered him on afterwards. Surprisingly enough too, some of the minigames have hard modes. We didn't actually know this until we completed the tile minigame in one of the caves, and since there wasn't a line behind us, the attendant mentioned that we could do it again to turn on hard mode. It was genuinely a lot harder than the first version, and it made it a lot more interesting. We did beat it, of course, since, we're such good capital G gamers, but it did take us a fair bit longer. I have no clue if this is common knowledge or not, that some of the games have hard modes, but that's something else you can do if the crowds are low enough. Although, given how many people are there in opening year, it's probably going to take a few years to get to that point. Maybe if you ask the attendant, they might do it for you. I will say that, for the minigames, I probably would not have liked it as much if the lines were a little bit longer. Once we got enough of the keys unlocked, though, we went into the Bowser Jr. boss fight, which was honestly the least interesting part of the entire experience, but it wasn't bad or anything. You just have to jump around and swat away bombs that are thrown at you and attack Bowser Jr., and then at the end you all jump together to get to the flagpole and win the game. It's entirely projection-based, and it tracks your movement like the Xbox Kinect. But in my experience, it was a little buggy, and sometimes the movements wouldn't properly register. Perhaps I wasn't moving properly or something, but whatever. I think the other minigames are the highlight of the experience overall, and definitely what I enjoyed playing and got the most excitement out of, but there's no doubt the finale is a cute little endstone to the whole experience, and I bet kids really love it. I will say though, it's a little bit funny to be playing the final boss after the other games, because pretty much all the other games are unmarked, there's no spoken dialogue. You just discover them, the attendant tells you what to do, and then you go do it, and you have a great time. But for the final boss, they have a little pre-show to explain what's going on, and they have this person saying, okay, when you're in there, swat away the bob-bombs, and get the fire flower. Remember, when you get the fire flower, you can throw fireballs. Okay, let's review. When you get the fire flower, you can throw fireballs. And, standing there and listening to that, yeah, it made me feel like I was being talked down to. But it's made for kids, so I don't know, I just thought that was funny to point out. So yeah, I really liked the Power Up Band challenges. I honestly think it's worth being called one of the land's main attractions. It absolutely blows Galaxy's Edge out of the water in terms of interactivity, that's for darn sure. Back when that opened, I expected it to be like this, and so it's nice we finally got a full realization of that idea. A bit of a tangent as well on this whole interactivity train, if you'll let me indulge really quick. Back a few years ago, or probably still now, I think it's still open, but it's a toss-up whether or not it's being operated. Whatever, Walt Disney World used to have this game next to the entrance of Pirates of the Caribbean that not too many people knew about, called A Pirate's Adventure: Treasures of the Seven Seas. And it was basically a really surface-level adventure game where you got a quest and a physical map and had to run around Adventureland, finding different spots and areas to progress the story. The interactivity didn't go any farther than just tapping your magic band at the right spot and watching the show that happened at each spot. But it was still pretty cool, and it showed you all these different hidden features that they had tucked away into Adventureland that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise. Plus, they used to give out a free Fast Pass for Pirates of the Caribbean at the end, although I think they've stopped doing that now that they charge money for them. This was always a cool experience, because honestly, theme parks are more than just the rides that are within them. And I really think we need more of these well thought out interactive elements instead of just, oh, press something on this mobile app and then this tower will make sound effects like Disney did with Galaxy's Edge. Pretty disappointing there. So, huge props to Universal and Nintendo for giving us a good interactive experience. I will say it is a pretty darn shame that such an integral part of the land, in my opinion, is locked behind a $50 paywall per person, since that's the price they're charging to buy the wristbands to participate. But I guess in theory you could just have one person buy the band and then have other people help them out with the minigames too. They'll let a good amount of people in your party through to the final boss even if you have only one band, so that could work for larger groups. But I will say, trying to get children to share one wristband is probably going to be a nightmare scenario. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Also, growing up with Nintendo as a kid probably had a major impact on my enjoyment in these activities. So, if most people in your party aren't jumping up and down at the thought of doing these games, you'll probably be fine if you skip out. But for me, that was a huge highlight of the day, and of the land overall. Now it's time to talk about the Mario Kart ride, or Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge. I'll be honest, I'm used to calling this ride by its Japanese name, Koopa's Challenge, so if I get that mixed up anytime in the rest of this video, that's why. But regardless, this ride is, or at least was, actually pretty divisive in the theme park space back when it opened in Japan. I addressed some of my thoughts about the design decisions of this ride in episode 3 of the Dark Ride Zone, but that was before I had actually gotten the chance to ride it myself. The Cliff Notes is that I can see why people were disappointed that this wasn't mostly a thrill ride, but Nintendo has to appeal to everyone, including very small children, to teens, to young adults, to parents, to grandparents, etc. So adding a super tall height restriction would have absolutely wrecked the point of this experience. Plus, since the AR glasses are controlled by the guests, or at least the part that attaches them to your head are, you don't want to be moving too quickly when guests could drop or throw these things and then strike other riders. It's just a recipe for disaster. Again, I had already seen the ride footage, or at least the sets, online before. So I was mostly going in with the expectation of learning how well the AR and game mechanics played to the sets. That's what I was mostly interested in finding out about. The plot of this ride is that Mr. Bowser himself has challenged Mario and friends to a race across the entire Mushroom Kingdom, and you're on Team Mario, and that's it. Honestly, it's Mario Kart, so a plot isn't really necessary that much, but I figured I should probably point it out. That's why all the Mario Kart TV folks have set up shop in the castle, and why we're able to walk right into the front gates without so much as a Goomba trying to murder us. I will say, the queue is spectacular, and absolutely a huge highlight. The music in here in particular is super intimidating and really hypes you up for what's to come. You know what, I should probably just get the music thing out of the way now, and say that it's spectacular in the entire park, but especially in the Nintendo areas. They've taken specific tracks from individual games and remixed them in all sorts of styles to match the areas, and it's just, oh man, it's gorgeous. More than once I caught myself humming along to the tracks in the land, especially the ones in this queue. I really love the Bowser's Castle music. The queue has a ton of physical props from the games and shows off a sort of factory line Bowser's got in his castle. And it's pretty kinetic, it hypes you up for the main ride well. The pre-show is entirely wordless and teaches you how to put on the AR glasses as well as how to play the game, which is still a pretty impressive feat to me, honestly. The fact that they can teach you how to play without a single word of spoken dialogue is honestly pretty cool. It goes over turning the wheel when the arrows pop up, aiming with your head to look at the other riders, and then shooting the enemy riders with Koopa shells using the buttons. Successfully performing each of these actions gets you coins, and your goal is for most of your group in your cart to have over 100 coins by the end of the ride. Now, important to mention is the fact that you can actually lose this ride, like an actual video game. And this is what makes things more interesting, because you won't actually know if you won or lost until the very end. It has a different end scene to the ride. I'm not exactly certain on what threshold causes you to win or to lose, or if a certain amount of the cart has to get over 100 coins, or just one person, but I will say, we did win the game when we went, so again, capital G gamers. Although it took some time to get used to, I'll be honest. Once you get on the cart and start looking around, it was really weird and a bit surreal to see a bunch of characters moving around, very bright. And the aiming system was pretty strange at first. It took a while to get used to. Honestly, the start of the ride is pretty overstimulating. With all the action and movement and the interactivity the game demands from you all at the start, it's pretty overwhelming, but by the second scene in the cave, I finally started to get used to it and I was able to play it like any other video game, and I really enjoyed it. It's a bit surreal, and the AR characters are way brighter on the glasses than the rest of the set and the ride, It's probably something they can't control, and it's a little strange. But I'll be honest, I was shocked to see how many props were projected by the glasses onto the sets. There are many instances where the set will transition into effect on the glasses, or vice versa, and in most cases, it's decently seamless. And surprisingly, the tracking is really dang good. I have no clue how they pulled it off, but there's this scene near the end of the ride where you're in a volcano and there's a giant airship above you, and the airship is a physical set, but the characters standing on it aren't. We actually got stopped in that part of the ride for like 30 seconds or so, and the ride went into a delay mode where it gives you infinite shells. But I think you still got the coins from shooting enemies there if I remember properly, which was a huge benefit because you have to be pretty frugal with the shells you shoot otherwise. You can run out pretty quickly if you're just spamming them. So that's something nice to know if you want a really good score. If you happen to get stopped, just go crazy. And at the end of the ride, you pass through Rainbow Road, and then the end scene is a large projection room that shows which team won. So we got Team Mario and got to see all of our scores in our cart. And not to brag or anything, but I was the best in our cart entirely. You know, I'm just that good. And then I saw the TV screens after that, which show the best of the day and the best of the month, and all that pride instantly disappeared. There are some people that are pretty dang good at this. But I did really like the ride. Next time I go, I want to figure out how to get such high scores. There are some folks with like 300 plus coins, which I didn't even know there were so many in that ride. Overall, Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge is a really fun dark ride with some neat shooter elements, but it does take some time to get used to. And even then, some people may not be able to process everything at once, and probably won't get much out of this thing as a result. It's not worth a super long wait though. Next time I'd go, I'd probably only want to wait an hour at most, but come on, knowing me, I'd probably wait any length for anything at Nintendo World, being the shameless shill that I am. That being said, I really recommend the single rider line. I have no clue how quickly it moves, but it goes basically right after the first room with the Bowser statue to the room right after the pre-show, and then you instantly descend to the station after that point. So it can't be too long, and on this ride, you're basically just doing your own thing anyway with the headset. So riding with your party isn't that important if you can remember your score after getting off and brag that way. This is going to be a long review, but whatever, it's fine. If there is a line outside of this cafe, do not wait. At least I do not recommend waiting. It's like the 3 broomsticks at a leaky cauldron in the Harry Potter lands, where you're waiting in line for a seat, and you place your order in line. When you sit, you type your table number and then wait for them to bring you your food. Maybe it was an off day when we were there, but this wait and dinner took us about an hour overall, since the queue was moving at a pretty slow speed. And once we actually sat down, it took a long time to actually get our food. And we had placed our order in the line and said we were there and had a table right when we sat down. So maybe it was just a bad time to go. It was pretty packed inside. I got the titular Mario burger, and it was alright, just a standard theme park burger. Tasted pretty nice, and I liked the mushroom, but it's also $20. So yeah, you're definitely paying both a theme park tax and a Nintendo tax for the blessing to eat a bun with Mario's mustache burnt onto it. My brother got the mushroom pizza bowl, and he said he liked it, but it was spicier than he anticipated, although he did really like the bread bowl. It looked adorable. And my father got the
Superstar chicken salad.
He said he liked it, but it was pretty light for what he paid. We also had somebody who got the gluten-free version of the Mario burger, and they said it was pretty dry, but again, it's a burger. I'm glad that they had the option for gluten-free versions of that meal. I really like the ambience in this place though. They have nice peaceful Mario hub world music playing, and every so often it gets dark and Bowser's Armada comes through with intimidating music before it goes back to normal, and the staff scream, "Bowser's coming!" right when it happens, and the crowd gets all excited, and then when they leave, everybody claps. It's pretty fun, but I'll be honest, after the 3rd time it happens, and you're still waiting for your food, it does wear out its welcome a tad bit. Also, Toad talks. Like he just actually talks with normal English in the queue. He's just talking to you. Like, I mean, it's in the high-pitched, shrill voice that he does in the games, but he's saying coherent sentences, and that sounds wrong to me. I don't know what about it sounds wrong, but it just does. I want him to be incoherently screaming like normal, but actually no, now that I think about it, standing in a queue with that noise probably would have been torture, so fine, I'll take what I can get. I mean, it's a nice little restaurant, and it's fun to say that I ate there, but with how busy it gets, I would have much rather preferred, in retrospect, to check out the other food offerings in the park, just because it probably wouldn't nearly take as long to eat there as it would have been here. But that's just an assumption. Donkey Kong Country! Let's talk about the second half of Super Nintendo World. Or more like the 3rd part in terms of size. It's a lot smaller than I expected. It's basically a straight shot with a few shops on the side, and the entrance to Minecart Madness is right at the end. That being said, I did get all of the Kong letters, and I found the iconic K. Genuinely the high point of my life, that was. In terms of interactivity though, there are a few things you can scan, like the rest of Nintendo World, for points and stamps and whatnot, and there's also a little Rambi rhythm game you can play for fun too. I didn't get to play it, but I did watch people doing it when I was walking by, and it looks fun, but it's not really connected to the rest of the Power Up Band challenges. It's sort of a separate thing. I also got the Crush float that they sell here at the Bubbly Barrel, I believe it's called, which has banana and pineapple soft serve as well as a pineapple soda. And it was really good, honestly. I love the Dole Whip that they sell at Disney properties, and clearly they've noticed how popular it is because Disney started selling it at all the other parks too, so to have a Universal spin on it is great, and I genuinely love how it tasted. It seems like a bit of a strange mix at first to have these chocolate pieces with banana ice cream and pineapple soda in a waffle cone. Feels like a lot going on at once, but I really like it, and plus, you can keep the spoon! That's a free spoon right there. They really should put that on the sign. It ups the value by like 15 cents. Free spoon with every purchase. Come on, Universal. You can totally get way more sales if you do that. I will say though that Donkey Kong Country isn't nearly as fully immersive as the main Mario area. At least not near the dividing line between DKC and the rest of Nintendo Land. There's very clearly a painted wall with a bunch of jungle colors and shapes that's right up against part of the show building for the Yoshi attraction. And when you're walking out of land, it's very obvious. But it's not a big deal. Everything else looks pretty spot on and jungle-esque, which is what you'd want. It's time to talk about Minecart Madness. So I'll be honest, I thought this ride was called Donkey Kong Minecart Madness, but apparently while researching, it's just called Minecart Madness, which is a little strange considering how long every other major ride and land at the park's name is, but whatever, I'm glad they had restraint for this one. We did this ride last and got in line before the park closed, as it had a listed 80-minute wait, but we were able to get through the queue in about 50-ish minutes. As for the queue, it's a queue. It's covered, but it's still technically outdoor, but it has some neat interactive elements where guests have to tap their band at the same time in 2 different spots for the queue for a secret, which was a little confusing to a lot of people walking by, but it's a fun little effect that triggers if you do it. Most of the queue is just wall at first, since you walk under the track, but once you get upstairs to the same floor of the station, it gets more interesting. It's nowhere near the level of the Mario Kart ride queue, but it's still pretty neat. They've got this beautiful animatronic of Cranky Kong talking once you round the corner towards the station, and that's definitely the highlight of the queue, and he also talks. This is starting to creep me out. But they're speaking in character about how you need to go get the golden banana, which has been stolen by some tiki guys. And they've got some minecarts you can use, yada yada yada. Go get them, champs! I will say, though, that the best part of this queue is, by far, the mural of the original Donkey Kong game on the wall. Notably because of this, this beautiful, absolutely gorgeous photo of Donkey Kong. I honestly kind of want to get a shirt with this guy on it. He's, I don't have any words, just, he's perfect. Whoever brought this into the world, thank you. He's got the same vibes as like the Yippee meme creature. I love him. As for the ride experience, it's pretty solid. I didn't expect that much from this, but it packs in just enough thrill to be engaging. It's using a new ride system that I believe is called the Boom Coaster, where the car is attached to the track from the side, so you can make the car appear to disconnect from the fake ride track and then fly off the rails and stuff. And it's decently convincing. I mean, it's still pretty obvious you're still connected to a ride track the whole time, but going down a drop with no visible track below or ahead of you is pretty cool. There are a few fun twists and gotcha moments where you go a different direction than expected, and there's more indoor scenes than I expected too, although they all last like 10 seconds at most. Some track jumping like from the games, there's an evil tiki guy, and at the end you secure the golden banana and get to look at a very nice looking Donkey Kong animatronic. So overall, this is just a better version of Skull Island Reign of Kong. No notes really. The ride is far more enjoyable than the videos online make it appear, so I think Mario Kart and this ride kinda share the same curse in that regard. I mean, honestly, there are a few decent drops in here, even if most of this does feel like a family coaster. But yeah, this is a pretty good addition to Nintendo World, and I think it fits the thrill niche for the land pretty nicely. We got to ride it when the sun went down too, and I really think that heightened the track jumping effect. This little mini land is honestly gorgeous at night too. But this ride absolutely does not earn its wait time. It's quite short, and with the way the ride system is, it's just not going through people fast enough. so the wait times are usually one of the longest in the park, if not the longest. This might be another one to consider for single rider if you can. Okay, I can hear you already. Shut up, Webb, we get it, you're a Nintendo shill. You probably already have a Nintendo Switch 2, just move on! First of all, I don't have a Switch 2. Have you seen how expensive those things are? And secondly, I haven't even talked about Yoshi's Fruit Island. I'm just kidding. Let's move on to Dark Universe. This was the land that I was the most excited for going in, primarily because we haven't really had a dedicated land to the Universal Monsters before. We've had the horror makeup show, which mostly pays them lip service, but at least in terms of dedicated year-long attractions, as far as I'm aware, they've never really had anything substantial. If I recall correctly, the lore for this land is partly based off of the cancelled Dark Cinematic Universe, Universal's concept for their own monsters-themed version of the MCU, which was cancelled after the first film in it, Mummy 2017, absolutely bombed. I could be wrong on that, but I will say if that is true, boy did we miss out on some sick movies. That's besides the point though. Today I want to talk about what we did get, which is Darkmoor, the themed world that Dark Universe takes place in. And right when you walk in, the architecture and tone of this land is the exact opposite of Nintendo. Things are decrepit and decaying, everything's constructed with this really dark stone and wood, and at night, this place especially comes alive with the Frankenstein Manor in the back and the fog. I didn't have the time to really check out the restaurants or the shops here. We were tempted to dine here for lunch actually, but we were swayed away from it when we heard how some people had been handling the black buns and bread that they serve in a lot of the meals here. So we ended up going to Nintendo's restaurant, which in its own way was also kind of disappointing. I mean, the black buns look cool, but I don't want to take my chances with my food, especially not with my stomach. I'm certain the shops are great, but again, didn't get the chance to explore them. We did get to walk around the entire land though, even if we didn't get to explore much within it, and even though I haven't seen Berk, I do really want to dive more into this land has to offer more than any other, honestly. Also, we went to the restrooms here, and I was a little shocked to see that the toilets are pitch black, which is honestly one of the most intimidating things in the entire land. I was not expecting that. But yeah, the vibes here are great. During the day, it looks nice, but I'd recommend saving this place for when the sun goes down, especially when you turn that corner and you see the entire street with the manor in the back. Man, there's nothing else like it. We didn't get the opportunity to ride Curse of the Werewolf. It was late in the night when we were considering it, and at that point it was either that or Minecart Madness. And again, Nintendo shill. I've heard mixed reviews about it, but I can't say much aside from the fact that the entrance to the queue that we walked past was pretty eerie and very appropriate. We did, however, get to ride Monsters Unchained: The Frankenstein Experiment. And this is the ride I was referring to when I was talking about Ministry. Oh my gosh, there's a lot to talk about. First of all, the outdoor facade is spectacular. They really went all out with the Gothic architecture. And the sheer scale of it, plus the electricity at the top, it's just gorgeous. A great sign of what to expect on the inside. You walk into the front door of the manor and you see this gorgeous entrance hall with the super interesting mural. It's pretty terrifying. And then the entire queue takes place across the different rooms of the manor, so you get a really good look at the entire house. Some key highlights are the projection on the wall once you enter asking, who's the real monster, which I think is a motif of the entire ride. It's a little bit strange to just see it slightly cropped when you're walking towards it because it turns very abruptly, and the whole projection you can't see it when you're far off on the other side of the queue. There's also the camcorder footage of them encountering the different monsters, the electricity surging in all the wires when you get to that room, and the deceased body of the first Frankenstein experiment just kind of chilling in a scan pod thing. And you can see it in full grisly detail. It's a bit much. Honestly, if kids are going to be scared to go on anything, it's definitely going to be this ride. Feels like the same kind of style they make their Halloween Horror Nights houses with, but without all the blood and the gore and stuff. But yeah, this queue is phenomenal. Eventually, you make your way up to the second floor next to a beautiful oil painting of Victoria Frankenstein, and then the pre-show rooms are right after that. There are 2 pre-shows in this ride, but when we went, the pre-shows had been down for quite a while, and so we didn't get to watch them. We just walked straight through to the locker room. But I did end up watching them on YouTube after we left the park, and I will say, at least from the footage I saw online, they are spectacular. Going into the ride without the pre-show information, we didn't really know what the plot was, but we were able to pretty quickly get it from the start of the ride. But again, I'll get to the ride when we get to the ride. Right now, let's talk about the pre-show that I didn't get to see, but I did get to see online. I will say, I really like this ride vehicle animatronic that Igor uses, and even though I didn't get to see it in person, the second pre-show looks genuinely phenomenal. It gives me Rise of the Resistance vibes, with Frankenstein and Victoria interacting. You can really feel the passion and slight insanity with Victoria and her obsession with getting this experiment right. There's a fly. There are multiple flies. Hey! Get out of here. I'm trying to talk about Frankenstein. In the story of this ride, we're there to help out Victoria with her latest experiment. After being briefed on the ride vehicle we'll be riding, controlled by her assistant Igor, who I love by the way, best character in the whole ride, Victoria addresses the guests and says how we're there to witness her latest and most greatest experiment, bringing Dracula under her control like all the other monsters she's captured. She also shows off version 2 of Frankenstein, who is great, and they do something similar to the Frankenstein movie where they have to dim the lights when he walks out, or because he's too sensitive to them, which is pretty neat. I will say, I don't entirely know how we're helping with our presence, but I get this is probably more of a I'll show them all motivation from Victoria. And honestly, it doesn't seem forced, so whatever, I'll let that slide. The acting and performance work from the voice actors in this is phenomenal all around. Victoria seems pretty genuine in her desire to make people appreciate and love Frankenstein, but she's clearly at her wit's end and starting to lose it. And I just love Frankenstein and Igor, especially Igor. He seems like you shouldn't trust him with a pair of scissors, let alone your life on this robotic arm, but come on, how could you hate this guy? He's great.
The doctor will see you now. This is fun, yes?
After the pre-show, you put your stuff in the lockers as usual. You can't bring anything on this, which makes sense. This ride system itself is a plus version of Forbidden Journeys from Islands of Adventure, which I already mentioned is a favorite dark ride of mine, but they take it a step further and remove those irritating boxes that force your vision directly forward, so you can see everything around you, and it really elevates the experience for me. I have heard some folks say that being able to see the underlying ride system and the track below you is a bit unimmersive, and they don't like that as much. But honestly, to me, it's pretty cool to see how high up you are, and it adds to the intimidation factor of the ride at the start. Plus, as the ride goes on, you don't really get to see directly around you as much. You're far closer to the show seats. So after the very start of the ride, this kind of becomes a non-issue. But that ride in general, oh boy, it is a lot. I can't really go into a play-by-play that much because of how much happens, but I'll give you the basic gist of it. After Victoria starts her experiment, Dracula escapes from the cage portal thing keeping him trapped and lets all the other monsters loose, causing them to run rampant underneath the Darkmoor sewers and tunnels, and now you've got to survive while the crew try to figure out how to get them back under control. In many ways, it's similar to Ministry and the bad guys are free, we gotta stop them plot, but it's far more focused on physical sets and animatronics, and because of that, it's really a treat. Some of the key highlights include the start with the bell, the monster playing the organ, every single time animatronic Dracula is freaking floating and taunting you. What an absolute king, honestly. The brief mummy segment, the werewolf jump scare, and near the end when they start using light beams to kill the brides of Dracula, as well as basically all of Igor's dialogue. This dude is carrying this entire mission, honestly.
Igor got you. Don't worry. You're gonna love this.
There are a few quote-unquote jump scares in this ride, but they're not as close as I expected. Rather, the framing makes them feel closer than they are. The only awkward one that didn't really work that much for me was the creature from the Black Lagoon, since he's below you and the car kind of jerks down to show him wailing about. But he's still kind of just moving around decently far away from you, so it's a little bit awkward. Everything else feels pretty nice though, especially the werewolf when he reaches down from the roof to swipe at you. There are a lot of physical sets and screens in this ride, but I feel they do a pretty good job choosing when to use a screen in a scene and when to use a physical set or proper animatronic. And honestly, it's a lot longer than I expected. There's so much to look at and tons of action constantly happening around you. A particular highlight when I went, although it's probably just going to be a our party thing, was near the end of the ride when Dracula taunts, "Are you afraid of the dark, my friends?" And my brother audibly yelled, yes I am!" which made all of us burst out in laughter. That was pretty great. At the end of the ride, Dracula is either killed or stunned or brought under control. I'm not entirely sure what happens to him, but he's stopped. And Victoria finally states how every monster will bow to the name Frankenstein. And then Igor asks us to leave a good review before he freaking dies!
Thank you for coming. Now, only good reviews, yeah?
Dude, they killed Igor! He was the best character! Why did they do this? I was absolutely in shambles after that. I had to think about that for a few minutes afterwards. We lost a real one today, folks. And then the ride ends a bit slowly, where you're listening to this music as you return to the station. There's a fair bit of waiting after the last scene until you actually return to the station, which is a bit odd, but I'm not opposed to that because I was busy trying to collect myself after Igor died in front of my eyes. Music is also a pretty big highlight in this ride. Danny Elfman brought his A game, and it shows. The guitar riff at the end of the ride is heavenly, and when I start thinking about it, it just gets stuck in my head again. So yeah, I really loved this attraction. But that's not to say that it's perfect, because no ride is. I genuinely believe it's the best dark ride I've been on, and honestly my favorite ride Universal's ever made. But it does have a few flaws. Notably, there are a few times throughout the ride, not that often, but still a few, where you'll just be facing some black curtains. And I wouldn't mind that much if the curtains made sense within the catacombs. Like, I get this is a theme park ride, not everything can be a full scene, but I feel this should have been some rock work or something. I mean, yeah, you have to have dead space between the scenes sometimes, especially considering how many scenes are crammed in here. But the curtains feel a bit strange, and their placement is a bit too forward. Not a big deal, but a little strange when you're going through. Also, the ride ends pretty abruptly. You're going through, and it does somewhat lead to an ending, but Dracula is taken out so quickly and suddenly, and then Victoria starts bragging to you basically immediately after, which is a bit odd. I feel there should have been just one more short scene between those two scenes to help the transition to the end, perhaps showing more monsters being killed or captured to reign in the chaos at the end, and then continue with Victoria's bragging. However, if there's one major issue with this ride I have to point out, it's the fact that Igor dies. But if there was a second major issue with it, well, it's not an issue with the ride itself, but with its reliability. This attraction, when operating, usually has a very short wait, because it's a capacity machine, which is great because I really want to ride it a million times. But there's no guarantee that everything will be operating properly. When we rode, not only was the pre-show down, but the final Dracula animatronic that lunges at you near the end wasn't working either, and neither was the mummy hanging from the roof during that scene. Now, when issues like these crop up, I generally don't try to hold them against the ride, especially because that's the gamble that you take when you make all physical sets and animatronics. Sometimes things go down, and you just have to accept that until the park can get them back in working order. I'm alright with that. But later in the day when we re-rode again, the organ monster animatronic wasn't working either, and he's the entire point of that scene. It makes me feel odd, because I do really like what I saw, but I also didn't get to see the full experience. Then again, there's no way to absolutely guarantee that you'll get to see the full experience even if the ride is running, because they'll probably just run it anyway, even if critical animatronics are down. And for a ride that basically relies on animatronics, that's pretty weird. I'm rambling. Basically, I wish Universal would be more comfortable with taking the ride down and closing it for an hour or two to ensure that most, if not all, animatronics are operating when the ride is open to guests. Because it only works if the animatronics are all operating, especially considering how many scenes are fully devoted to these animatronics. Without them, the ride might as well just be like Ministry and have screens for everything. And I didn't like Ministry's primarily screen-based approach, but at least with that ride, when it's running, you know for sure you will basically get the full experience, assuming the audio doesn't get desynced, but that's besides the point. I don't think that's a normal occurrence. I just don't want people getting off of this and being disappointed because they expected this super cool attraction with all these animatronics, and then only 2 of them are working. Universal really needs to get things under control with these animatronics and get them reliable, or at least if they can't do that, come up with alternate B modes that point the car towards a screen or something to show an equivalent scene. It's a great ride, but it needs more polishing. But yes, when Monsters Unchained is fully operational, it lives up to the hype, and it's everything I would have wanted from a Monsters attraction. Good work, Universal Creative. Although I really wish you kept Igor alive. Like, come on, man. He was my bro. He was my goat. He was my main man. He was the best of all of us. And you just had to take him out. Why did you do that? Okay, this has gone on long enough. Let's go over some final notes really quick. This may sound like a tangent, but there's this amazing Defunctland video that goes over the history of Disney's FastPass. It's honestly really good, and I recommend watching that over my own FastPass video any day. But I had a shirt based on the Shapeland park that I wore to the park that day, and 6 different team members complimented it. 2 in Stardust Racers, 2 in the queue for Monsters Unchained, and another 2 throughout the rest of the park. And I really liked that. I mean, yeah, it's always nice to get a compliment, but clearly Epic Universe team members are fans of Defunctland, which is pretty good to see. Basically every team member we interacted with at Epic was phenomenal. No real issues there. Everyone was super polite and fun to talk with, especially some of the staff at Monsters. I'm also not a big meet and greet fan myself, but we did get to see some characters off in the distance, mostly at Nintendo and Darkmoor, and they seem pretty great. I bet they're tons of fun to interact with, but my introvertedness will probably keep me from ever doing so. Also, the locker system is really nice here. Each attraction that requires lockers has them built into the queue proper, Velocicoaster style, which is pretty nice. But they're also the large lockers, and they're using facial recognition now instead of ticket scanning. I was a little worried as to how that would work since I didn't know how precise it would be, but I think I prefer that to the old system any day. Even at Stardust Racers, when it took the photo, the sun nearly blew out the contrast on the image, and I was worried that it wouldn't work, but first try it got who I was and unlocked the correct locker, so bravo on that front. I will say, I wish the merch throughout the park was more diverse. There's a lot of great stuff, but each land seemed to have its own set merch that repeated across all the gift shops it was related to, except for Harry Potter. We saw a ton of the same Nintendo merch in the main Epic gift shop near the entrance that we saw in the 1UP Factory store, for example. It's not a big deal, but it's something to keep in mind if you're looking and waiting for that one perfect merch item. If you didn't see it after one shop, unless it's Harry Potter, you've probably already seen it all. So that brings me to the final part of this review. What did I think of the park overall, and should you go to Epic Universe? Well, as for me, it was pretty spectacular. Now, that's not to say it's a perfect park, but I really enjoyed my time inside, and I didn't feel like I missed anything too major, with the exception of Berk. It's obvious why so many people in the theme park space are pretty excited about this place. There's a lot to talk about, and a ton of new exciting things that Universal Creative has done and pushed the boundaries with. I do want to go back soon to check everything out and ride Monsters Unchained a million more times, hopefully with all the animatronics operating. And I am hoping that by that point they'll have ironed out some of the capacity and reliability issues at most attractions. But time will tell. For around the $170 I paid for my own ticket though, I had a pretty good time. But should you go? Honestly, the answer to that is gonna come down to whether anything inside the park really excites you. For me, I was slightly curious to see Berk in the Ministry of Magic, but I was really interested in Nintendo and Dark Universe. And so I think I got my money's worth. Not just because I liked the areas I wanted to see, but also because I was pleasantly surprised at the other offerings the park had. But if you're not that interested in the atmosphere of any one land in the entire park, you're probably not going to get as much out of it as I did, especially when tickets are really expensive right now. The park is also pretty light on rides, at least it is compared to Islands of Adventure, and a good amount of them are thrill-focused. If you're only focused on getting on rides and don't want to look around and check out the other various shows or performers or food options, you'll probably want to hold off, especially since most days it's going to be very hard to ride everything without an express pass. I went in expecting that, and we didn't even get to experience all the rides, but I was okay with that because I anticipated it going in. Crowd levels are going to be heightened during opening year, and you'll have to pick and choose what you want to do if you do end up going. But every ride and land has something new to offer, even the ones I wasn't the biggest fan of, like Ministry of Magic. Plus, there are a ton of people who really love the Ministry of Magic ride, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of it. And that's good to see, so there's probably a ton of things that I had opinions on that you will completely differ on. Don't take my word for it, go experience it for yourself. If you go to Epic, you'll have things to do. You'll just have to be comfortable with waiting for them, and probably not with getting everything in on one day. Thankfully, they seem to have accommodated for long lines in the design, with the only exception being Toadstool Cafe. Seriously, Mario Restaurant is cool, but it's not over an hour of time spent cool. So yeah, I really like the park, and maybe you will too. Actually, you probably already do, because I don't really expect anyone who hasn't gone to the park or isn't planning to go has watched all the way through this. So, yeah, great job, Universal. I'm excited to see how this park evolves alongside the rest of yours or as the years go on. One final thing I do have to call this park out on, though. It was a huge missed opportunity to not call the park Universal's Universal Universe. I mean, come on, you've already got the word universe in there twice. Like, you could have taken it all the way to the top and just made the park name only the word universe. Actually, yeah, that's my review. The park would be a lot better if it was called Universal's Universal Universe. I mean, heck, you could even throw the word epic in there too, I guess. But you just gotta make sure to balance it right. Here's some ideas I've got if you're workshopping this Universal Creative. Universal's Epic Universal Universe. Universal's Universe Epic Universe. Epic Universal's Universe Universe. Universal's Universal Universe Epic. Epic Universal Universe. Universe. This bit is so stupid. What am I doing?